welcome back to Data Leaves. Today is the first full day of Data Leaves. We are in the office of Advancing Analytics. Hello! And today I'm interviewing the CEO and co-founder Advancing Analytics and featuring baby Simon in the background as well.
Absolutely.
Right. Terry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So hi everyone, my name's Terry. So I'm the CEO of Advancing Analytics, and maybe to give a bit more context, so as well as being the CEO, I'm also an AI MVP for Microsoft, which basically means I spend far too long at conferences typically talking about AI and not enough time actually to do any real work. I live in Devon, so we're in our London office today. Most of the time I spend in our Exeter office, and I live in Devon with my wife and 2 kids. And
about 5-6 years ago, Terry and Simon started Advancing Analytics, and they today have 75 people.
Yeah, 75 people, yeah, all spread all over the UK, and then one in Paris.
What drove you and Simon together to actually start Advancing Analytics?
Yeah, it's a long answer. So I think if you roll all the way back, historically, I've always been a terrible employee. I look back at previous jobs and I think about the kind of performance reviews I had, and they would always end up being something like, yes, there's a lot of well-intentioned, but kind of like rein it in a bit. And I think that's always been something that I've maybe struggled with, that I always wanted to change every job I ever worked at, and not a little bit. Like I was like, I want to change everything. So I've always kind of had something like that and I wanted to do it, and then just struggled and constantly just like batted up against people. And so like Advancing was kind of born almost about 8 years ago, when Si and I were working on a customer, and this was roughly about the time like everything analytics in Azure was. We'd gone from APS being this commodity piece of kit to it now being in the cloud, and we'd started doing, I think, what was like the first UK rollout to Azure SQL Data Warehouse. Like Azure Data Factory had just dropped. It was Data Factory version 1, which if
Old school, yeah.
If anybody remembers just how awful that was as a product,
Terrible.
it was good fun. And so we were doing that project together, and like after a day of just building like what I thought at the time was the most stuff, we sat in a pub, and no one else in the whole business was doing these kind of projects, and I was like you could do this. And I think at that point Simon was like, oh no, idiot, no chance. And then very much like Inception, I think over time that idea kind of grew, up until the point that we had something that was like, cool, this should be something that we should do. But and the difference between myself and Simon is, I think Simon is very calculated and knows what he wants to do. Okay, I'm more like, okay, let's do it. And so we went through a whole period of kind of agreeing what we were going to do, and we were like, it was just before Brexit, so a little bit before that, and the plan was that we would start slow, we'd think about it, we'd plan everything out, and then we would put it. And I did a few things slightly before that. So I registered a company and I made a website, and then the people who I worked for found it within about 12 hours of putting the website live.
And that's how they said you're a terrible employee.
Yes. And then by the Monday, I'd been fired. And so,
all for the better.
Absolutely. I often look back at it and think, would I have done it? If I hadn't had something to actually give me the push, I have ever done it.
I'm looking back.
No, I really don't. And so I had the best thing ever, which is called gardening leave. Gardening leave, honestly, I think I had like 6 weeks of gardening leave, and I had like 6 weeks to basically build everything you needed for a company, and then go and try and find a customer. And thankfully, the 10 years of prior talking at events and being an MVP, these things made that part very easy. So then it's just kind of grown from there. And yeah, we are where we are today with a team of 75. Gosh, it's really hard. I think when you have to look at everything at such a high level, very difficult to hone in on like what is a big problem. I think one of the things, one of the things I'll always say to everybody running, I think any business, when you're in a high growth business, every single year, like running an entirely different company. And so the big problems that we had in the first year were things like, well, there's only two of us. How do we do anything at scale? And you would try to talk to somebody about a project and they'd be like, yeah, but we need like 8 people. You're only 2 people. You can't help us. And then it would be, so we would do the hard problems, big problem. Hard problems just require somebody smart to solve something. Big problems require scale. And we went into the second year when the team was like 8 people, very different again. We actually had scale, but then we had the pandemic and everything else. And so everything was remote. And whilst that was challenging, it did also give us a great opportunity to really double down on YouTube. And so we grew that a lot through the pandemic. But also we were able to run multiple projects globally because no one really cared about where you were. But then you roll that on year, and ultimately things get bigger, problems change. You spend a year fixing a big problem, and then the next year you're like, aha, nailed it. And then just a whole load of other big problem. And so, I think that there hasn't ever been such a big major problem. There's all these minutiae of these little problems that add them together that are massive. So very much it's a case of what is the biggest thing that we need to solve, and then we solve it, and then there are 2 other big problems. So I think today my biggest problem is pure prioritization. Like my whole entire job is just where do I prioritize time? How do I best use my ability to solve what is the most important thing, rather than maybe what is the shiniest thing to actually do the stuff that helps. Okay, so I'm going to caveat everything with my work-life balance is probably not the work-life balance that everybody wanted, and I don't say you should try to replicate what I do, but also, you know, work-life balances and well-being are something that I think we're all quite guilty about trying to press upon what we think is the right thing. So I've been guilty massively in the past trying to make sure that the team, you know, work from 9 till 6 or whatever it is, contracted hours, and don't do anything beyond that. And I know for some people that is right? And that is perfect. But for others at different stages in their lives, your work-life balance can flex, right? When you're potentially younger and you want to do more because there's an interest and you want to learn more, great, right? Go and do that. Then when you're at a different point in your life where you need to do more and be focused and just do that to 6, whatever it is, do that. So go do you, right? Don't do what I do. So so what does an average day in my life look like? So my working day starts normally at about 4:30, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And I have to also apologize.
Great start.
Yeah, because I'm gonna sound like some wanky business influencer, and I don't mean to. But yeah, my day generally starts at about 4:30. So today my day started at 4:30. I get up, get ready, and then depending on where I am, I'll either be here in London or I'll be in my office in Exeter. And normally that means I'll be in there by about 4:45, about 5:30, something like that. And for anyone else who does something similar, you will also know that between 5:30 and 9 o'clock is the most productive time that you probably ever have, because no one else is awake. Everyone else is asleep and having breakfast or doing something else. And so you have like a core couple of hours when no one bother you. And it's perfect. So generally start work about 5:30. And for that time, so from 5:30 till 9 is pretty much where I have an opportunity to think about the big problems and how to prioritize and what I need to do. So typically that means like I'm an avid list maker. I've got OneNote. I think if you put a large language model over my personal OneNote, it would the death of AI. I don't know what would happen. Trying to train anything on my train of thought is a terrible idea. But yeah, so typically in that period, it's just literally getting stuff going. And then from 9 o'clock onwards, then becomes the day of how on earth do I prioritize? And so typically it will be back-to-back telephone calls, face-to-face meetings with the team and with our partners, with our lovely customers. And that could be remote, that could be in person, a whole mixture. And then that typically runs me up until about something like 5-ish p.m., 6 p.m. And then from that point onwards, it's very much a case of if I'm at home, I'll be at home, see wife, kids. I try not to work after 5 p.m. Not always that good. And then, yeah. But if it's a day that I'm in London, it'll be something like a user group. It'll be, dinner with customers, or whatever, really. Whole mixture of things. Yeah, I had a look this morning when I was tracking it.
What I want to know.
It's 5 hours. Yeah, I get some. It works. It works for me. You'll see I'm drinking coffee. I mean, just replace that. Trying to do exercise and various other things. But yeah, typically about 5 hours. And then at the weekend, I catch up.
Fair enough.
So yeah, so don't do me, you do you, and I say for me it works.
So what's your favorite part?
It's a good question. It's probably my favorite part, the hardest part, sometimes my least favorite part, all in one, and which is our team, and growing from 2 people to 75. We have seen some incredible people come through advancing. And one of the things that we always set out to do very early on was just be very clear about what we wanted out of a company. Like we wanted a business that if somebody wanted to move on, that we wouldn't be like, oh, this person's dead to us, whatever. We wanted to basically celebrate that and be like, great, like we're really pleased that you worked with us for 3 months, for 3 years, whatever that might be. And then we hope that when you move to the next place, that people look back at their CV and they're like, they were at Advancing, they must be brilliant. And so we spend a huge amount of time around developing the team. And when I look back, like we've had people hit their 4-year anniversaries. I think we're close to a 5-year anniversary now as well. And seeing how much people grow and how the team develop, that is by far the best part. And then maybe joint best to that is also seeing the incredible outcomes that come from the work that the team do. So being able to see with customers, like just how they're able to use what we build and how very quickly it can transform their business. So I remember working with one of our customers, and we deployed we built a whole platform for them, amazing stuff, did a whole load of stuff, put in huge amounts of data, and then we built a pretty decent dashboard over the top of it, and we're pretty happy with it. It articulated what we needed it to. And I think within the first 2 weeks, that had been used by 16,000 people in their business and had been used to significantly optimize what they were doing, shelf space, huge impact. And we always hope that there's impact with what we build, then being able to see it, that stuff's amazing.
That's the favorite parts. The least favorite part.
So I would say my least favorite part is also possibly my own problem that I generate, and that is that there are 1,000 things that we want to be doing as a business. We are continuing to grow. We want to do other things. We want to expand our partnerships. We want to deliver better products for our customers. We want to build new IP. We want to advance. Well, there's so many things that we want to do. As I mentioned, it's a constant battle of prioritization, how we do things in the best way and when we do them. So maybe the hardest part is constantly trying to figure out where do we spend the time in the most impactful way. And so, yeah, hardest part, or part that I least like, is that there is always so much to do, and I can see the finish line of everything. Like, if we could do all of that, we would be able to do all of that. But unfortunately, it's always a case of, well, we want to do all of this, we need a little bit first. So that's always the hardest part, is how to prioritize, where to start, and always knowing that there's so much more that we could be doing that we're not doing, and we know we want to. It's blocked currently.
Patience is.
Yeah, it's not my. Yeah, that's definitely not a. It's not a thing that I do very well.
What's the hardest decision you had to make?
There are always many hard decisions, and like hard decisions are always going to be, having to let people go from the business, and there are generally right times to do that and wrong times to do that. And I often liken some of the really big hard things that you have to do. So I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I'm just a pop culture nerd all over the place. But I liken a lot of it to basically generating my own Horcruxes. And so the first time you ever had to fire someone was like the first Horcrux I made. Like, part of my soul splintered off at the first time we did that. And I remember at the time, like, how cut up we were about it. Like, it sucked. It was the right thing to do, but it sucked. And yeah, and so there's always been like hard decisions there. And then again, now the hard decisions are always around, like, we focus, where do we do things? Like, should we look at working with other platforms? There's constantly, every decision we make is generally a hard one. And I think the way that you make hard choices more manageable is, as a business, we're a really value-based company. And so ultimately, I think when you look at any challenging decision you need to make, if we can relate that back to, our purpose as a company or the values that we have, hopefully you kind of be like, right, is that actually right for us? Like, does that genuinely mean that we are advancing as a business, and we're advancing, technology and our industry, or not? And so hopefully if we do that, maybe it makes things a little.
Do you ever disagree with Simon? Simon?
Yeah. I mean, this one or the real one, absolutely, on almost everything.
So how do you resolve your disagreements?
So
over beer?
yeah, absolutely. There's generally that. So somebody, and I can't remember who it was, something that I read a long time ago, basically said, like, if you're going to go into business with someone, don't go into business with someone who is very similar to you. And I think for a long time, Simon and I were incredibly guilty of that. We were very similar, we were very aligned, both very technical, not very anything else, very salesy, etc. And we had to very much, grow with that. And so what we've done individually is Simon is still incredibly technical focused, more so than pretty much anyone else that I know. And what I've done is deviate into the more business side of what we do. And fundamentally, that has kind of made us two very different people now, which is great. It gives us the ability to see things from each other's perspective, but also we both kind of understand each other's perspective. And so, although we might disagree on a lot of things, we are very much able to make it work, and we always do. And I always think it's challenging for the team sometimes, because they also see they expect us to be very much aligned on everything, and then we'll be sat in a meeting or we'll be face to face and just be like, no, I don't think that's how we should do things. And we're like, oh, okay, and then figure it out, and I'm like, okay, cool, and that's how we're going to do things, and we move forward. But I think it's you know, it's healthy to have that kind of relationship. Touch wood.
I think you guys make a really good team. Like,
Touch wood.
so interesting you mentioned that. I do think it takes a special person, or take a special team to actually leave their own the company they're working for as consultants and start their own company. Not only you need to be technical, you also need to be incredibly entrepreneurial. What's your secret sauce for success? I guess you've grown from 2 to 75 people.
But well, first of all, thank you for calling me so special. You know, certainly appreciate that. It's a good question, right? Now, the way I think the way, so I think I think differently to maybe to a large amount of people, but maybe lesser than the population. So as a kid growing up, I sucked at everything academic. Like you gave me English, anything, like my spelling and my writing is terrible. Any academic subject, with the exception of maths, I just hated. I was, you know, I was always in the bottom sets at school. I was terrible at that. I just couldn't get into it. Couldn't really get it. And then anything that was a bit more creative, I really got that stuff. And so, like my background, I think people expect, you know, to have a computer science background. My background, my undergraduate degree was in film and media studies, because you should not let 17-year-olds decide what to do for the rest of their lives. Terrible idea. Don't let people do that. But it was at university that my then girlfriend, now wife, was like you should probably do like a dyslexia assessment. And we did through the uni, and they were like, yeah, you're quite dyslexic, mate. I genuinely think, and you can read a lot about dyslexia, like for me, it is always my like superpower. So what I think like dyslexia gives me is I'm terrible at writing, terrible at spelling. It's really awful when I have to write lots of sales proposals for customers. Yeah, and ChatGPT, thank you very much, is perfect for making my things make more sense, and sometimes less sense. But what dyslexia gives you is you can have a look at like Google dyslexia thinking, and it's very much about, you know, people who typically have dyslexia are very creative, they're very big thinkers. And one of the things that I've always had a great ability to do is to be able to listen to somebody tell me a problem and then create a solution to that problem quite easily. And I've also typically had a great ability to listen to people and remember the most innate stupid things, but generally that helped me somewhere further down the line. And so definitely for me, I feel like that's been a big factor. But then also I grew up in a household of, I wouldn't say like an entrepreneurial household, like my family, you know, never made much money, but they always worked for themselves. They were always small jobs, and things like that. Like my dad had his own business as a self-employed builder, and I think through that kind of like growing up, seeing that, oh, you don't work for other people, you just do your own thing, always I think had an impact on me. And I think when I look back at sixth form and uni, I always had side hustles, and I always did things like for a long time, I could tell you I had an encyclopedic knowledge of the price of every single video game. And I would use that to basically at like weekends or at lunchtimes, I would walk around to secondhand shops or car boot sales or anywhere, and I would buy games below what they were, and then I would sell them on for more. And that basically gave me like my income stream through university and through college, and then into almost like starting into lower paid like jobs. Like I would always like that always worked for me. So I think from that, everything has just kind of grown.
So it's an incredible story to go from, you know, selling secondhand video games to where you are today.
Yeah, It's just a natural progression.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I do firmly believe nothing you ever do is ever wasted. Everything
Mhm.
comes back to you in some shape or form. What keeps you up at night these days? Like I interviewed Mara a few weeks ago. She's a digital nomad, solopreneur. Like if she has projects, if she has money to travel and to eat, her entire family is fed, right? But you've got 75 people on your table. So what's stressing you up?
I think you would expect that there would be lots that keep me up at night, and maybe I've strayed too much in being a sociopath. That honestly, there's not a lot that keeps me up at night. Like I do truly trust everybody that works at Advancing to deliver what they are there for, and they all do. They're all exceptional, and I think at any small startup or scale up, like everybody has such a big impact, and if you don't pull your weight, it's so obvious so quickly that I sleep quite comfortably because I know and I trust everybody to do what they need to do. And so whilst it's somewhat nerve-wracking when you look at how much it costs to run a business of 75 people every single month, I'm also quite reassured that I know I've got a phenomenal team who are there to ultimately underpin that and make sure it happens. So yeah, I'm like in previous businesses, I would chat to the owners and they would tell me about, how when they think about how much it costs, they don't sleep. And maybe I'm say straight too far, but I genuinely nothing keeps me from sleeping
Also,
other than my awful work-life balance.
yeah, if you wake up at 4:30 in the morning, you cannot keep
Yeah.
up at night for too long, right? Advancing was nominated as UK's best workplace for Being. So what did you do? What did you and Simon do to make sure that, this is a great place that people
Yeah,
look at?
yeah. So like we love getting awards, right? Awards are amazing. Thank you very much to everyone who ever gives them. And like being in the great place to work in general, and then for technology, like those things are amazing. But I think one we are really proud of is that point around well-being. And when you look at like what we do as a business, our business is entirely focused around our people. Like if we don't have people, we don't generate revenue. Like that is everything to us. And so if you don't treat people right, they will leave. And somehow like other companies get away with that. I have no idea how.
Let's write that down.
Yeah. But it's very much about trying to make sure that we are always constantly inward looking, that we are thinking about like what the team are doing and how we can help them. And so one of our core values as a business is zero burnout. I get the irony around me saying I start at like 4:30 every day, and that's not a thing. As I say, don't model me. Hopefully, model the rest of the team. But yeah, zero burnout has always been something that we are passionate about ensuring that the team are doing that they're doing the best work they possibly can. And so that is definitely part of well-being. And then there's just a huge amount of other initiatives that we run internally that are all basically focused around trying to make sure that the team are happy and healthy. Because if you want people to be creative and be the best versions of themselves that they possibly can be, they really can't be doing that when they're up against it and they're stressed and they're worried. Like you need people at the best they can be.
So if people want to come join Advancing as a consultant, what general advice do you have?
Well, number one, look at the website and apply. That would be my first one. But I think whenever you look at job adverts, they can appear incredibly daunting, and we get that absolutely. Like you look at it, and there is so much on there, and you're like, and I know it's entirely different for the way that men and women perceive that as well. But what I would always say is there is one skill above all that we need, and that is, does somebody have the ability to learn? If you have the ability to learn, you can do the rest easily. Like tech is tech, right? You can learn tech. Like everything we work with changes, like year on year, things are very different. So you need to be able to learn. And the rest of it just becomes nice to haves. It really helps if people know the tech stacks that we work with. Great. If you don't, and you have an interest and a passion, that goes almost far more in your favor. So I would say that. But the other thing as well to always bear in mind with the sort of thing that we do is consultancy is not like your traditional tech role. Like being a data engineer in a company on your own is one thing and great, right? You can be incredibly narrow focused and you can deliver what you need to. The challenge that we have there is being a consultant is the soft skills around it are almost as or more important than the tech. And so that is like, can you talk to people? Can you effectively communicate something that is deeply technical into something that somebody who isn't deeply technical can understand? And so really not only working on, yes, your core ability as a data engineer, as a scientist, as an analyst, whatever that might be, but really thinking about how you do, there's a load of great stuff out there. Like go and listen to, we have a podcast on it, which is called Skill Stacking. But think about skill stacking. Think about how you can apply a little bit of sales influence into what you do, how you can influence somebody. It's not about influencing somebody into trying to buy something from you. But if you're a data engineer and you're like, I think we should build this, and everyone's like, nah, I don't want to build that. Like actually being able to influence someone or talk effectively about why that is beneficial, not only from a technical perspective, but from a like people, process, and technology, and how the business are going to benefit from it. You'll open up everyone's eyes, and everyone just think, wow, like this person is phenomenal. And so I would say, like, if you want to be a good consultant, being technical is one thing, but the wider parts around it are also super important. And then if you want to be an exceptional one, I just recommend just research. Like being able to say, I think we should do this, but I think we should do this because this is the peer-reviewed research behind it. Even better.
I'm going to put Advancing website in the description if you want to check out their job openings. As well, I'll put their podcast called Totally Skewed in the description as well. To check it out, there are some really great contents there. Thank you, Terry, for coming on to the channel and share your experience. Some very, very good advice for people out there. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next episode. Bye. Thank you for watching Data Leaps. If you think the content is useful, please like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it.